Congratulations on making it to the fantasy football playoffs. Now that you're here, you cannot afford starting the wrong defense because it quite literally could lose you a league. In this video, I'll give you every single defense ranked from S all the way to F tier and some waiver wire guys we can pick up to make sure we are covering all of our bases. If you appreciate the research and everything that goes into this video, hit that like button and give yourself some good luck for the playoffs, and subscribe if you want this video coming every single week. But the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be our #1 defense on the week, getting their matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. We know this is a positive one. Geno Smith a little bit banged up. If he plays, if he doesn't, that does not matter for us because of how positive this defense is. They are good in the secondary. They're good at stopping the run. They've been a little bit hit or miss as of late, but they're really good at restricting points to opposing offenses. Now, that doesn't always generate the most fantasy points. It's turnovers and sacks that do that, but you can expect with this Raiders offensive line, a ton of sacks are coming their way. I have their ceiling up at 13 fantasy points, but their floor down at 8.1. Either way, very safe, top option at defense this week. The Houston Texans are also another really good option that get a good matchup this week against the Arizona Cardinals, but also in week 16 as well. So pick them up if they're still out there. They're probably not, but they are the #2 kicker this week because the Arizona Cardinals offensive line, not great, but more importantly, the Houston Texans defense are one of, if not the best in the entire NFL. They are bottom 5 in allowing fantasy points to kickers, wide receivers, everybody. It does not matter. They are stopping literally everyone, which makes them a great defense, and they can also generate those sacks, which we absolutely love. They are one of the top options this week. I have their ceiling up at 13 fantasy points as well, and their floor at 8. It was a really tough one to decide which one I was putting at #1. Both of them are positive, though. Just like the Seattle Seahawks, who make it in the S tier as well. The S tier this week is completely like a juggernaut. They're amazing because they get their matchup against the Indianapolis Colts, who now don't have Daniel Jones and are probably going to be starting Philip Old Man Rivers. Don't tell me how that's possible. I have no idea. I'm just giving you fantasy football advice. The Seattle Seahawks are one of the best internal units of defense as well. They have a great defensive line, a great secondary, and they should absolutely destroy this matchup with no Daniel Jones. I have their projection of a ceiling up at 13 as well and a floor at 7.9. Again, you can see this S tier is absolutely insane. Dropping it down to the A tier, another top option who might still be out there on waivers for you, so definitely check that out, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Getting their matchup against the New York Jets, might not have Tyrod Taylor in this matchup, which would be even more positive for this Jaguars defense. And if you look at their fantasy point totals over the past few weeks, they have been amazing, averaging over 10 fantasy points in the last month and a half and 8 fantasy points per game on the entirety of the season. That is almost top 5 in fantasy points. Great matchup, a really good defensive line that can stop the run, which is great because they have Breece Hall. They're a little bit worse against the pass, but who's going to beat you? AD Mitchell and John Mechie? I don't think so. I have their ceiling up at 12.8 and their floor down at 7.7. We can also go through and get the San Francisco 49ers. Great matchup this week against the Tennessee Titans, who have actually been putting it together a little bit on offense as of late, but the 49ers themselves, a little bit of a banged up defense. So they are the riskiest option so far in this list, but again, with the matchup against the Tennessee Titans and how bad their offensive line is, you can expect the San Francisco 49ers to get a decent amount of points, sacks, and turnovers from this team. I have their ceiling up at 12.1, which is definitely a tier down, and their floor down at 6.6. Again, just showing you how different these tiers are. We also have the Kansas City Chiefs coming into this one against the Los Angeles Chargers, who don't look like that bad of an offense right now, but with Justin Herbert a little bit banged up, not taking a ton of snaps under center, he's probably going to be more healthy in this one, but it really speaks more to how good this Chiefs offense is. It's one of the lower projected game point totals at 42 as well, which is definitely positive for the defense, but they are very good. It's stopping yards. They're allowing some of the most yards and touchdowns to opposing teams. We can get them in this matchup, but one of the more risky again with their ceiling up at 11.2, but their floor down at 6.4. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys, one of the riskier options again because this is the Cowboys defense. They are not great in their own, but they get a matchup against the Minnesota Vikings with JJ McCarthy, who don't take last week against the Commanders out of anything more than the Commanders just being absolutely terrible. I don't have my Commanders jersey on right now, but I've watched more than enough film to tell you that game was really not impressive, and it should have been that way through and through. I don't expect JJ McCarthy to put any type of touchdown numbers on the Cowboys like they did against the Commanders. I have their ceiling up at 11.5, their floor down at 6.2 though, just because it is the Cowboys defense and we really never know what the range of possibility is for them. We can also go get the Chicago Bears, who is one of my favorite waiver wire defenses this week. It's not a top one as far as safety, but the Cleveland Browns is a positive matchup. I don't expect Shedeur Sanders to look like prime Shedeur Sanders as of last week, and the Bears defense is #1 this year by a good margin in turnovers forced. That works really, really well with Shedeur Sanders and this Bears offense. They also don't have the best offensive line either, so you can generate some sacks with Montez Sweat and the rest of those guys on the line. I have their projection for 8.2 fantasy points with a ceiling of 11.8 and a floor down at 6.3. We also can go get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another top waiver defense if they're out there. They also get some great matchups for the rest of the fantasy playoffs as well. This week, though, they get the Atlanta Falcons, which Kirk Cousins is not a good quarterback. He is not efficient, throwing some interceptions, getting sacked a bunch because he cannot evade tackles. He's too old for that. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a bit of a pass funnel of a defense, but we're likely not going to have Drake London in this matchup, so there's not too much to worry about there. And Kyle Pitts is questionable as well. I have their ceiling at 12 points because of that. Their floor down at 6.1, though, just if things do happen to go right. We also have the Green Bay Packers as a top 10 defense this week. Really negative matchup against the Denver Broncos. But the Packers defense themselves is good enough to keep them in this tier still. They have a great defensive line, generating a ton of pressures and sacks on non-blitzes as well, which should be good for Bo Nix and getting him out of his rhythm. They don't have the best offense as far as weapons go, but again, great team, getting a ton of wins. I think they're a little bit fraudulent at the record, but that doesn't matter for this video. 7.9 point fantasy average for me this week. Also, the Carolina Panthers, another really good waiver option for you against the New Orleans Saints. They don't generate a ton of interceptions and turnovers, but they are coming off their bye week, and they do have a pretty good secondary with J.C. Horn leading that there. I have their fantasy point projection at 7.7, another top option if you do need them. We can also go get the Los Angeles Chargers defense, who have been hit or miss so far this year, but they do get a matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a good team. But again, this game point projection is expected to be low on sportsbooks, and the Chargers defense isn't necessarily terrible themselves. We can also go through and get the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we get a matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Very positive one. We don't expect Tua to do much of anything. The only issue is that the Steelers are allowing the #1 most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers as a whole, so they're definitely more of a risk on the pass game than they are the run, but we know Tua isn't very good at taking advantage of that, and Devon Achane is a bit banged up, so you can start the Steelers in this week's matchup as well. But the top waiver wire defenses for this week, #1 is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, again because of that matchup we talked about earlier. They are pretty much an S tier defense still in the waiver wire. You can also get the 49ers, who are right under the Jaguars in our total ranking so far this week. Again, the Tennessee Titans matchup is just that good. The Chicago Bears are also rostered in only 17% of leagues. I absolutely love them here. And the Carolina Panthers, if you do need it, a bit of a riskier option as you can see from this video, but rostered in 4% of leagues. You can start them if you need them. But that's going to finish out this video, guys. I do have the game-by-game breakdown coming up for fantasy football, and the running back breakdowns coming soon. You don't want to miss that. So make sure to have your post notifications on. I will see you in that one. All glory to the man above.